Hey, thanks for tuning in. Today's video is super cool. So I tried a bunch of ideas to see what can you get going with the new square beads that have this like carving like side of into them. I'm not sure what to call it, but so I put the camera on for trying a couple of new ideas, and every single one worked out in a way that I was super excited about. So I'm going to show you 3 designs in this tutorial because they all happened and I feel like I need to share them. So the first thing I tried was I did a wrapped kind of wire work earring. And that was to test out the concept of putting something along the side, and that worked out really nicely. So I carried on with a necklace idea, and I made a necklace focal. And so the focal of this necklace has the same thing happening, but with just a little spin on it. That's a little different. So I did some wrapping and I only embellished the bottom. So this made a little focal, and then I just created, I got really inspired right at the end there and started adding things. And so I decided it was going to be very pretty as multi-layer. And so I did another little beaded chain with seed beads. This one came out really pretty and I was just loving it as is. It was supposed to be like the side for the focal, but then I loved this. And so that happened. So now there's this beautiful design. And then last but not least, actually it was kind of the in the middle design. I pulled out the beading wire, and because the beading wire idea for how to use these little edges on that stone seemed like it just at least needed a go. And so it worked. It worked the first time I tried it. It felt like magic. And so I had the camera on the whole time the first time I was trying it. So it's kind of a new thing. I was just seeing what would happen. And I figured, hey, if it works, great. And if it doesn't, I'll just re-record. But you're seeing me making this for the first time in this video. So I'm excited about it because it came out so cute. I mean, look at that. That's all beading wire, guys. And so out of all of them, like this is the one where I was just like getting really inspired, and it just energized me because I just don't really know exactly how it's working, but I'm showing you step by step how I did it. So somehow it's working. It stays like everything stays on the side. So, and I've been, like playing with it and photographing it, and everything's been working out. So how cool, how cool. So anyway, this video is kind of like a 3-part. It's got the earrings, and then it goes into the bracelet, and we show the focal for how to do this really cool wire wrapping at the end. Hope you enjoy it, and let's go. I'm starting with about 6 inches of 22 gauge wire, and that's going to form the base around my stone. So to do the strong part of the wire wrap. Working at one end of that wire, form a wrapped loop, and that wrapped loop does not need much of a tail. We're just going to trim it once the loop is made. So we're just going to create a regular wrapped loop on the end of that beading wire. Sorry, on the end of that craft wire. I am using the 22 gauge craft wire. Okay, so I've got that ready. I'm just going to trim the end. So that's step 1. So the next step is to bring the stone on, and you'll want to create a second wrap loop. And this time, the next wrap loop is going to sit above the stone, but we're going to do something to create a little extra space. So what I did is I worked a little further down on my round nose pliers. So the best way I could try to explain what I did is we're going to want to have room to do some more wire wrapping underneath the spot where I create this wrap loop. So I just took the round nose pliers and I went kind of further up on my tool. You could also use some of the bale forming pliers too if that helps you with more consistency, but I kind of just moved up on the tool, right? Just to create some height there. And now I'm just going to go ahead and make a wrapped loop. And I'll do that on a normal spot on the plier. So for me, I usually work kind of at the midpoint of my plier when I'm making a a regular wrapped loop. So you see it's a same process we've usually performed, but we've just got a little space, a little extra. And now I'm going to go ahead and go around. Again, we're making 1 and 2. So you have the stone, it's a little bit free moving, there's space around it, but you've got this long extra section here. All right, so for the next step, we're going to need to bring on some 24 gauge wire. And I'm going to go ahead and do some wrapped coils to start this 24 gauge wire on my 22 gauge wire tail here. And so I'm just going to basically hold it in place. It doesn't matter which direction you go. I think what I find easier is to maybe lay the wire on top of the one I'm trying to coil to, so like that. And then I'll just hold it as tightly as I can. Maybe even give it a little pinch there to kind of close it tighter. And don't worry if it slides around on your wire. We'll be able to move that. There we go. Okay. And once you get it started, it's a lot less tricky, but I find it gets a lot easier after I've done this one step right here, which is to pull these two into a round shape like that. And from here, I'm just going to keep coiling, and it should get tighter as I go. I think it's just a little tricky getting it started, but once you've got it started, it's a lot less fumbly, and all the other ones are easier too. All right. So I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to perfect those. And there's one side done. And there's the other. I'm going to trim the tail. And push it down. I should still be able to slide it. Make sure you can before you really go to town pushing it down. You may not know exactly at this step where you want it positioned on this yet. Just get through this next step, and then we can kind of hopefully still move it around a little more, and I'll do the final adjustments once I have the stones on it. And so for this next step, try to be a little delicate with the biddies, the little tiny cubes. I've had one or two of them I went a little too crazy with the wire and they snapped a little bit, so be gentle with those. And then you'll need a 4mm cube, and so our little embellishment looks like that. Let's string those on. Got 1 and 2. There we go. And those 3. And then just slide that down. And then what I usually like to do is I'll just hold the stones like this, just hold everything in my hand, and then just gently bring the wire over, or in this case I'm going to be going behind the 22 gauge because you can see here I'm exiting from the front, so I'll just bring it behind. I'm not sure you have to do that, but I think it stabilizes it a little bit, making this next step a little bit easier, which is just coiling around. And if you want to match the number of coils you did on the beginning side, for me that was right here. Did I do 4 or 5? It's hard to say. I think I did 5. And I'm just going to straighten out that one and that one. That looks good. Okay, go ahead and trim. I made an effort to do my trims on one side, so I kind of sort of have a front, but I don't think it's really that big a deal to have a front or a back specifically identified. All right, so here's where we're going to kind of decide like where we want this on our stone. So I am going to need to slide everything I did here back just a little bit. Maybe maybe to like right about there. That's a little too close. I'm kind of lining it up with this edge. And then you can bend it. First bend one side of the 22 gauge. Okay. And then what you're going to want to do is take these coils we made, push them together as best you can, and then bend to the other side. So you're going to get something that looks like that. And if I did less coils, it might not stick out as much. So that's what 5 coils looks like. It looks like on this one I only did 4. So maybe 4 or 5 is just about the right width that you want. And then from here, hold everything steady. And this is where that width, the extra, not width, but I guess height that we gave it is going to help us. So I'm going to go around once here. All right. And so you see we've consumed some of that height. The rest of it will be consumed up here. So go ahead and just press this down and go ahead and bend that a little bit this way. If you need to bring on those nylon jaw pliers, one thing I would caution is make sure before you tighten here that this stays in the inset of your stone. Because here's where we're going to lock everything in a little bit. I've got that nice and secure. When I do this step here, that's making everything I did on the last side tighten up quite a lot. So there's that side. I'm going to set this down for a second, and I'm going to bring on what I have left of my 24 gauge. I think this is going to be enough. I had just cut a really long strand before without measuring, but here I'm going to measure this one so you can see what I believe is enough to do one of the sections, 4 inches. And same thing, we're going to make a coil. And you know, it's a little challenging at first, but it's not too bad. And you can even just kind of help those first 2 coils sit next to each other. There we go. Holding everything in place with my fingers. And I'm just coiling around. And they're not going to be perfect until I straighten them out with my chain nose. But they're not bad either. I feel like they're okay. All right. So let's trim that one there. I might trim that again. I'm not sure. Let's take a look. There we go. Now I still want to be able to slide it. So before I go too crazy with making it extra tight, I'm going to put it right where I want it. And now since we're on this side where everything's kind of, you know, in place right where we want it, I can go ahead and do this part of the position. I don't want to go too close to the stone yet because I still need to coil, but I can get a general idea. I want it to sit right about there. Okay, so let's get a few more of our embellishing stones. So you've got these. And let's get the 4mm cube and bring those onto the 24 gauge strand, or sorry, wire. So just like that, bring that down. And it's already kind of has a little natural curve going to it. I'm going to encourage that further and just kind of bring it down. And in this case, I'm just passing behind the wire. Everything's going to sit right about there. So let's coil. I can always adjust this after I get the coils done. Right now, I'm just going to focus on making my coils look really nice. And 5. Okay. So yeah, 4 inches is a good number for how much 24 gauge to cut. That ended up being really perfect, and that was making 5 coils. Come around back here. This needs a little bit of straightening out. There we go. Okay, let's tighten down that end. All right, so I've got a little more space here than I want, which is no problem. Very gently, be careful with your stones. Just help it ease up a little bit. By pressing, you can even take some nylon jaw pliers, which is kind of what I usually do, and just push on your coils. So that was too far. No worries, we can fix that. Let's just slide it right back down. I'm gonna use my thumbnail a little bit. All right, so that looks good. That's right about where I want it. And now that I have it where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and just make another press with my chain nose. Just gently. I'm not going to go too hard with that, but put those in place. Okay, so here we're going to go around the front here. So actually I want to pass in front of it. Sorry about that. And actually you could come from behind it too. I'm not sure which one looks better, to be honest. In front of or behind, actually doesn't matter. And what I mean is if you want to pass back here or in front of your wrapped loop. Let me take a quick look at this really quick and see. Actually, yeah, that's going to look pretty nice. So I'm going to do that. Not sure it matters that much. Okay, I did one. And with the second one, I'm going to try and just go right under it. This is optional. I just did this on mine because I thought it kind of helped me lock in everything. Just bring that through. And pull. And I do like to use the nylon jaw pliers at the back. There we go. So there's our gemstone embellished sides. If you have any spots where you feel like things are sticking up a little bit, like I feel like I need to flatten this one down, feel free to do so. And the secret to all of this kind of work is to don't be afraid to take a little bit longer, go a little slower to get everything exactly the way you want it. And as far as the number of coils I did, maybe 4 is better than 5, but I think you can do either. It all looks really nice in the end. Let's trim the rest of this. It can be a little tricky to get your pliers in here, and you definitely want to be gentle with it, but there we go. Okay, so there's another one of those. And you can decide which is your front and the back and top and bottom. So I've got that one made. Let's do this top part. So this is 22 gauge wire, 22 gauge craft wire here, and I did about 5 inches. It's probably a little more than that. Let's see. I went a little over the 5 1/4 or so. I just like to have extra. It helps me maneuver my my wire. And I'm going to grab a few other beads now. I'm going to start with, in this case, I need 1 more of the stones. And then I'm going to need 1 of the flower, table cut flowers. So these are 10 millimeter. And let's start with a wrap loop. This is another wrap loop that's kind of toward the end of the wire. I'm going to just trim that end. And actually, I'm going to use my square nose just to hold my loop, so I can use my chain nose to flatten that end. That's a nice looking one. All right. So from here, get string on your flower, and then go ahead and string on your cube and slide that down. So you'll have this. And we're going to make another wrap loop at the bottom. And we're going to do the same thing we did before when we were creating the embellished edges, where we're going to give it a little space. So to give it some space, you just work a little further back on your round nose pliers, sorry, at this step. So when you do that first fold over, and that's going to give it some extra height. That really helps. And then in one swoop, just go ahead and bring your pliers up like that, and then bring them down a little so your loop is not as big as the height you were trying to give it. And finish your trip around the pliers. And go ahead and do your first set of wrap loop. So just like that. All right, and so from here, go ahead and push the wire around, and maybe helps to set that down. Push the wire around one side, okay? And then we're going to go across like that. Go around once, okay? And then come down around the other side of the wire. And from here, I'm going to pass in front. And I might use a plier assist to go around. There's once. And ending here at the back. Okay, I'm just going to gently trim that, and we'll go ahead and press this edge down here. All right, so there's the top half, and what I'm going to do now is just kind of make sure it's already pretty good, but I like to kind of put these in the same little row there. So far, so good. This is building up really nicely. And now all I need to do is add this part here. So this little dangle at the bottom. So for that, if you have a head pin handy, probably the easiest way. You could also do a knotted head pin, but I'm just using what I think is a 21 gauge head pin. And I'm going to get the faceted drops from my little bag here. Those go in. And let's get my round nose pliers. And put this on here. And there's one other feature that I added. I added a cube, one of those beautiful gemstone cubes. And I need an 11-0 seed bead. And it looks like I used the Nebula blue that I was using from the Cubes Bracelets tutorial. Let me grab that really quick. So this one, and we just need one seed bead. There we go. That jumped. Okay. So from here, we're just going to do a wrap loop. And this one I worked the fold over closer to the front of my pliers. Remember, we were working back here for all those others. We're not trying to create that much height here. So I'm working at the front, but then I do slide back a little bit to make the loop part about the same size as all the other loops I've been making. So you get something like that. And this will go around once and twice. And I'm just putting the round nose pliers back in to make that look nice like that. And let's trim. There we go. I'm being very careful because I have a seed bead. And I've broken seed beads before. So now we just need to assemble. Super easy. So let's just put our earring together. I used some 4mm oval jump rings. So I've got some square nose and some bent nose. That's kind of my go-to for jump ring forming here, or opening and closing. And again, this is a 4mm oval. Let's start with our little bottom embellishment. And so that, I kind of made an effort to put my, what I thought was my fronts together. So the front of the coils on this one, same thing here. I'm going to put this one on the same way. There we go. So there's the earring. There's how to do the earring. Let me get an ear wire. There it is. So that's just one of the many ways you can use these very cool beads that have these little carved sides on them. I mean, how neat is that? And this was the very first one I made, actually, the one I'm holding. And I noticed that I was still experimenting with numbers of coils. But it's a nice way for you guys to see, so you can maybe decide how many coils you'd like to make by seeing what all the different versions look like. Let me hold that up next to each other so you can really see it. So on this one, I did what looks like 5 on those, and I'm not sure if you need to do that many, because look at this, 4 was really good here. There's 4 coils, and then here's 3. 3 worked too. So 3, 4, or what I taught today was showing that you can even put on as many as 5 of those little coils. And that still looks pretty cool. But maybe 4 is the magic number there. I might make another set and try to match it a little more, but I'm not sure it's really something you'll see at a distance. At a distance, what you're going to see is that these beautiful gemstones are next to each other in a very unusual and unique way that I think is just kind of stand out from the usual wire wrapped earrings that, you know, we all love to make. So I had a bonus idea that I wanted to pop on and share, and this is a beading wire idea, and it's easier to work it with fine. So like a fine metallics is a good way to start. And you'll need a clasp. You'll want to start with a clasp, and you'll need 2 strands of the beading wire. So start with one that's about 10 inches, and it's probably a little more than you need, but just so you have maneuverability. And then another one that's pushing about 25 to 28. And this is the one that we're going to do some of the work with. So the first thing you'll want to do is string on your clasp. And do that with the long one first. So this is my 28-inch one. And I'm just going to bring those ends together. Okay. And then I'm going to slide my clasp to the midpoint of my beading wire. Bring both of those little ends of your beading wire through a crimp tube and slide that down to meet just above your clasp. And don't crimp yet. Remember the other strand we cut, the little 10-inch one? Well, go ahead and bring that one through your crimp and then through the clasp. And then we're just working with a little end of it, right? Bring that back up through the crimp tube. All right. And I'm going to get that to go through as best I can. It's a little tight fit, but try to get your loops to be about the same size there if you can. You can try to get them to sit side by side in there, inside of the crimp tube. And then we're going to go ahead and form this crimp on. So And just take a look at it, see what it looks like to you. And then go ahead and just bravely crimp. And it'll work. It's just still unusual. All right. So you've got, and so I do absolutely recommend you use the fine beading wire for that step. Go ahead and trim just the little tail. Okay. And now let's get some beads. And I was able to find a bead that fit over all 3 strands of my fine beading wire. And this, in this case, is a Firepolish bead that I got in the little set here. It's a Happy Camel. Yeah, so this worked, actually, going over all 3 strands of beading wire, which is making my master plan come together. I'm going to go ahead and string on one of these cubes, but I'm going to space it with some seed beads first, just on the middle strand. And so remember, we cut a strand that was about 10 inches, and then we had the long one that was 28, and we folded it. What'll end up happening is it'll indicate itself. So it'll actually end up being your longer one, and that'll just help you find it. Just kind of nice. So bring 2 of your 11-0 seed beads on, and then they will slide down to meet your Firepolish bead. And now you can put on the cube. And again, we're just putting that onto what was essentially the middle strand. And it'll look like this. Okay. And now we have these gorgeousnesses to go around the sides. Like that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to string on some decorative beads onto each of these. And one of the ways that I'm going to do that is, first I'm going to kind of position them so that there's going to be a way they're going to naturally want to strand out. And don't try to fight that. Let it, however it comes out of your bead, right? So for me, it's like this. Find that medium, and then we're going to string on the same kind of repeat that we were doing on the earring. So I'm going to need 1 of these on each side and 2 of these on each side. And just go ahead and put those on the beading wires that are running the sides of your design. So we're kind of going for this. And so I'm going to need to give a little height to the center strand here by putting seed beads on. And then I'll bring all 3 strands through another one of the Firepolish beads. And then we'll tighten everything down, and we'll repeat that. And then we'll have a really beautiful bracelet design. So start with seed bead, Firepolish seed bead on the middle strand. And you'll want to take each of these edge strands right here and bring them through the Firepolish. So I'm starting with this side here. And as you're doing that, you want to keep the center one coming out of the side too. And so it'll be right about like that. And I'm going to do the same thing here with this side. I'm going to feed it through just the Firepolish here. There it goes. All right. And let me help this little bead that fell here before I make it tighter. All right. I was actually really surprised that this kind of stays put. I mean, it does. I was thinking it would just kind of flop and come off, but once you've got it tightened down, and once we've, strung all the rest of it and we crimp, it kind of stays right there. Check that out. It would work even better if you were just doing seed beads. The use of the larger cube on the side, where I'm going with this is I'm thinking maybe if this was a round you would have 100% for surety that it would stay within this little crevice here, but I had my heart set on matching my earrings, so I'm going to go with the cubes for this design. But keep in mind, take a look at your stash, take a look at your round gemstones. Your round gemstones are going to lock in into this spot a lot better than my cube is, and so when you do tighten this step right here, you're going to get a nice lock, if that makes any sense. I'm already getting a great lock just here with the cube. I mean, it's staying pretty tight in there. See? Let me finish doing this. What I'm going to do is repeat. So I've got coming on here a seed bead. I'll bring on another cube. Oops. Sorry if I hit the camera. I didn't mean to do that. Oh, look, I got a clear one. I love this one. I am going to save that for another design, though. I'm kind of sticking with the Carnelian. I want the darker color for this design. I want an even darker one. Let's go with that one. Okay. And so on like this. So I'm going to string. And in fact, I don't see why you couldn't just string the whole center strand first. I mean, you could if you wanted to. But it's basically cube, seed bead, and then another fire polish, right? So I'm just going to keep doing this and then adding my side embellishments. So you see coming on like that. It's really working, and it's kind of locking in place with not a whole lot of effort on my part. All right, and so I've got this going on now, right? So let's just make everything tight. Bring these guys up. In fact, you can just bring them up out of the way, kind of in an exaggerated way, just for now. And then we got to bring each of these ends through the fire polish bead. Feed this side through. Okay, I'm going to feed the other side through, then we'll tighten everything up. Okay, there we go. And you'll have to help it quite a lot at first. Let's get the little, there we go. So I want it to be like that. Now let's tighten everything up. There we go. Look at that. I feel like it's magical. I'm really excited about it. I'm straighten this side out a little bit. Look at that. So yeah, so like down here, you see I started with 2 seed beads, and it was kind of like, I felt like it needed 2, but now that I'm looking at the rest of it here, I could have probably just done 1 down there. I don't want to take it apart, but you could even start with just 1 there. I still think it looks great with 2, but it's working really well even with just 1 seed bead. The seed beads I'm using, just in case I didn't flash those a second ago, are 11-0. They're 11-0 Toho, Metallic Nebula, if you like the colors. Wow. Okay, I gotta actually restring the rest because I'm gonna just stare at it and get all happy. So let's finish it, and then let's put the clasp on. And I've been trying to develop like a process for how to do this last ending part where everything kind of tightens up. And I think the trick, honestly, is to get them on the side like that. Even though there's lots of space here that I need to consume, I'm still thinking that like the best way is to get like that. And then just slide everything down. See, like that. And then bring this one down. And you can get the centering done that way. That seems to be, after trying it this many times, kind of the best process there. And that's looking good. Okay, so tighten this all up right here. Okay, so here it is, the whole thing. It's looking really nice. Look at that. So how do we finish it? So this part, I don't want to say it's tricky because it's not tricky. It's just going to require a little bit of finessing. We're going to need to get all 3 of these through our crimp bead. There's one. And it worked at the beginning, so it's going to work now. All right, all 3 of those are through. And just bring your crimp bead down. All right, and so what you'll have, and the reason I started with that 10 inches was I was kind of predicting that I would have one that's longer. The ones that went along the side were the ones that we started with as the 28th inch length, and those are these 2 here. Let me show you at this end. See the 2 shorter ones here? So those, after we crimp, we're just going to trim, okay? This one right here, we're going to put our clasp band on. It's right here. Slide that down, okay? And what I'm going to do is just bring this one back through the crimp. And actually, after all that effort to slide it down, I apologize. We're going to have to slide it up a little bit just to get the wire through. It's just blocking me. So now I'm going to need to do that again. Just slide that crimp. But let's make the loop first, actually, while we have free motion. Okay, right about there. All right. So again, I'm going to just make an effort to slide the crimp down so that it's sitting above the bead. And there we go. Everything there is still good. I'm still happy with how it's centered. Do double check that before you commit to crimping here. Okay, and then one last thing you want to check is the size of your loop, which mine is a bit big, so let's tighten that. Okay, I'm going to go with that. So again, we're crimping with 4 strands in there, and it's about a max I would do in a crimp this size, but let's just start trimming. So let's trim this side 1. And be very careful not to cut your loop. You just want to trim, maybe we'll do this individually to be safe. There we go, 1. And 1. Okay. There it is. Wow! Yay, I'm clapping for myself. It's so pretty. Look how nice it came out. I'm going to try this on. Okay, so, woohoo! And that's going to match my earrings. So nice. I'm just going to sit and stare at it. Don't mind me, okay? I just love it. And so I went at about 5 inches. I have a feeling this will be a little bit more than we need, but I've just been gotten into the habit of cutting about 5 inches for these steps. And we're going to kind of start with the same process of getting 1 wrapped loop on there. And when you're happy with that wrapped loop, just trim. I'm just forming it around. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with that. I do want to press down my edge. Or my tail, I guess, is the best way to call it. You can always do this at the end, but because I'm going to be wrapping over it, sometimes I like to do that at the beginning. Okay, so this one we're going to add on a bead that we haven't used yet. I'm going to be adding some of these Firepolish faceted rounds. And just go ahead and string on 1 of those. One of these. And then you'll need another one of the carved cubes. Oops. And then go ahead and put on another one of the Firepolish, a cube. So we're just going to do that. So I've got this on. And now I'm going to form another wrapped loop on this side of the design. And when I do that, I'm going to do the same thing again, but this time I'm going to really amplify how much space I want. I'm going to go all the way to the very back of my pliers and go ahead and put on a very, very tall little section there, and then just go ahead and come down and make the rest of your wrap loop. All right, so here's what I've got so far. I'm going to fix up that wrap loop a little bit. I want it to be a really good looking little wrap loop there. Okay, so we have some space on that, just a little bit. And that's what we're going for. Something roughly like that. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut a pretty long piece of 24 gauge wire. You want to cut about 10 inches. So here's 24 gauge wire, and I cut about 10 inches of it. So it's a lot. It's kind of a lot, but it's going to work. And I'm going to start with just making a small coil over on this side. Just getting that first one on there. And you can coil twice is probably enough, but I'm going to go 3. Why not 3? Just make sure it holds itself on there. And trim that little end. And feel free to coil over your wrap loop. You can optionally do that if you would like. I did it by accident, I'm going to be totally honest. It's not covering it, but it's right next to it. It's right about like that. I'm just going to tighten that a little bit. I'm a very slow wire worker, and so I just want to encourage anyone who's also a slow wire worker, don't rush yourself, just take your time. I feel like when it comes to using wire, the difference between that and bead weaving for me is that it's a little more committed. Like, the thread, you can always pull it out and restart. But this one, you have to kind of make sure you're going a little slower and you like what you're doing. All right, so got that on there. And I'm going to just take this this wire, and decoratively go around my bead. So just the first Firepolish bead here. And you can actually hold it on the bead once you've got it started. Keep everything right up next to the wrap loop on this side. And then go around in between the bead and the next bead. So just like that. And if you want to straighten this out with your nylon jaw at this point, you can, because sometimes I misshape it when I do that. So I've got it like about that. And notice I'm starting to get a whisper of a smile here. And I'm purposely doing that. Not necessarily an extreme one, but just a little bit. Okay, and so from here, the cool thing about what we're doing now is we don't have to do coils around every stone. So it's going to save us a little time. Let's get some of these beautiful little QB beads. We're going to need some more of the Carnelian squares as well. And slide that right down. And then just get that to sit underneath it. Bring this wire up and go around once over your beautiful Firepolish, around the center one time, and then you'll be kind of like right there. Okay, repeat what we did before as best you can, and then go around. Go around one more time. So you see how we hugged the bead? So just like that. And now I'm going to start heading over the ridge again. There we go. All right. And when you get to this side, you'll probably notice that there's not a ton of space left. but you can still get your wire underneath your first wrap at least one time, and then just feel free to wrap around it. I'm going to get as close as I can without cutting any other wires. And I have more of a smile on this side than that side, so let's fix that a little bit. I'm going to push this out of the way so you can really see what I'm doing. Bring my round nose in. Just give that a little bend. All right, let's take a look at it. And let's decide if we want to give it more of a curve. I feel like I need to do more of a curve on this side. So let's go ahead and just put those pliers in. And I'm going to just give it a little bit of a whisper this way. Okay. Same on this side. Okay, now take a look at it. So there's another way you could use these beautiful little rigid beads. But what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to make a beautiful chain with beading wire. So I waited to the end of this journey to see the beads I have left, and now I'm going to make my beautiful strand for my focal. And I have all these left to work with. So let's start stringing some beautiful little necklace sections. So I came up with something else I'm in love with. This is a really cool little focal necklace pattern. I mean, even just by itself, this would be beautiful. So I made this little center. And you know, I used to Czech glass as the center, but like if you had a really fancy gemstone, like I don't know, like a beautiful faceted round or a brio or just something like that, that could be the center here. I've always really loved the idea of taking these type of pear shapes and just making them kind of like the way you heart a center, you know, just like putting quotes around it. So that's kind of what I did there. I thought that looked really cool. And then I just did a pattern of 5 seed beads and then a cube, 5 seed beads and a big cube, just spacing them along the chain like that. I'm going to do that, carry that on all the way out. But I've actually kind of fallen in love with just this strand by itself, even though I love my focal too. I'm in love with it. It's so pretty. Okay, I'm getting some chain, guys. I'm getting some chain, and it's going to be multi-strand. So now I'm just doing the fun part. I'm just doing some assembly here. Okay, there we go. I got that side connected. We'll connect that with a jump ring right there. All right, so let's bring on all the beautiful pieces. There's the bracelet, the necklace, which I was wearing, so I actually just took off to bring down here and show you. And I've tested it and it wears in exactly the order that I was hoping. So it's perfect. Then there's the beautiful earrings that really go with that bracelet. Look at that. And I still have a bunch of things that I would like to try with these really cool beads. But just to summarize, these are all the cool things that I thought of that you can do with these little ridged cube beads. I mean, how cool is that? And so, very cool bracelet design. A very cool necklace design where I just went a little crazy with an accent strand. Because, you know, the cubes by themselves, you know, when you string them, they look really nice. And then, of course, there's our focal, which all it needs is some beautiful chain. And there you have it. Beautiful earring design. And you have a whole set. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and we will catch you for the next one. And until then, find all of these beautiful pieces at Sam's Bead Shop. You can go on the app or samsbeadshop.com and look for all these wonderful beads that I've used here. In the description, I will list out everything. All right, happy beading, guys.